And I know you're excited about our guest today.
I am so excited. I love meeting new people, and I don't know anything about his story yet. So, just reading the bio, I cannot wait. So, in this episode, we're going to sit down with Nizar Ladek, author of Power of Scars: My Journey from Refugee to CEO, from fleeing from Uganda to leading in the highest levels of corporate in Canada. It's just an incredible story that I cannot wait to see. So he shares how the deepest scars can become a very source of strength that we need to thrive both personally and professionally. And I couldn't agree with you more. So welcome to the show. How are you? Tell us all about you and how this came to be.
For sure. Thank you so much, first of all, to both you and Neil for having me on the show. A little bit about myself. I've done a variety of things over my career. Various senior roles throughout the career, largely in healthcare in Canada, as well as in academic and universities. And my last two organizations, I was the chief executive officer. Most of these organizations invest in technology to help, make the newest discoveries. How are we going to solve dementia, heart disease, cancer, or discover new galaxies? And so I was the chief executive there. And maybe I'll pause there and see if you have another question.
No, I definitely, I mean, did you always think, did you have that entrepreneur CEO mindset growing up? Always?
No, actually, I didn't. I thought I was going to be a professor. I wasn't very good in school, and yet I had this love of learning that developed when I went to university. And I did my graduate degrees, finished, did my postdoctoral work, and thought I was going to be a professor. But then I got my first job, like many people, and it was in a hospital working with children. And my heart immediately knew that was the right direction for me. And so as I did various roles throughout my career, there was always this sort of, I wasn't trained in technology, but I tended to sort of gravitate towards solutions that businesses were facing through a technology lens, and that made me valuable. And so I kind of had a knack for leadership and continued to lean into that and push it forward.
All right, let's talk about the leadership things that came up. I did a podcast recently, and she said, the host said to me, how are you in leadership? And I said, I'm terrible. I said, I'm a doer. I just, want people. So let's dive into the leadership side. I know we were probably going to go this way originally, but I want to get, if I can pick your brain, what are some
Sure.
ways that we can do better?
Yeah. Um, I think there's leadership in all of us, right? I think, the way we define leadership, sorry, maybe the way I define leadership is being able to see in people their capacity, their potential, and then finding ways to pull it out. And like you, Kelly, you said at the beginning, you love meeting new people. I share the same feel, right? I love meeting new people. And there's this enormous intrinsic joy when I work with people and they respond to me and I respond to them, and I can see the sort of wheels turning as I propose ideas, and you can see them sort of getting excited about things. To me,
Mhm.
that's leadership, is seeing in people what they perhaps don't see within themselves, and finding the right way in order to sort of pull those qualities out of them. Um, uh, it was something I gravitated towards. I started studying it at university. I taught leadership courses in business school. And over the course of my career, whenever I was faced with issues, I would look at things and I would listen to some of the greats, Jack Welch from GE, or recently Steve Jobs and folks like that, and Reed Hastings of Netflix. All of these folks, I admired them and I read all about them. And then at a certain point in time, I sort of thought to myself, something Steve Jobs said at his Stanford commencement when he was speaking. And he said, if you don't love your job, leave. If you have to really love it. And I believe in that advice. And yet the pragmatist in me said, I've got a wife, I've got two kids, put them through school. We don't all have the opportunities that Steve Jobs has to be able to say, if you don't love it, leave. Like, we've got bills to pay, we've got all these kinds of things. And so, one of the gaps that I saw in the leadership literature, having read hundreds of books, was a book that was just written by an ordinary Joe like me, someone who has, relationship challenges with marriage, kids to raise, bills to pay, mortgages to do, and still finding within that how to exercise your leadership in various organizations, and still sort of recognizing the pragmatics of our everyday lives. And so, you would see me on a subway, you wouldn't think twice to look at me. And so I wanted to have something that was there in the leadership literature that talked about my lessons. Also, speaking as a person of color, I think the current term is a racialized individual. There are very few of us in senior leadership positions. In Fortune 500 companies, there's probably less than a dozen of 500 Fortune 500 companies, right? So I thought there was a voice that I needed to sort of contribute to that information.
And why do you think it is? Sorry, Kelly.
No, go, Neil.
Now, why do you think that is that there are not that the amount of people of color in those leadership positions in the C-suite, especially for
Yeah.
Fortune 500 companies?
I've thought about it, and I can't say I would have, like peer review journal evidence to be able to point it to the fact, but it's a lot of psychology, to be honest, Neil. People like to work with people they're comfortable with. And, we surround ourselves with teams that we're with like-minded individuals. It's been the source of, I think, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a missed opportunity, right? So this is why women are not well represented in senior C-suite roles. Men have been in those roles and they tend to sort of relate to other men. Individuals of a certain ethnic, may be seen as different, and different backgrounds, different experiences. And so I don't know if it's as much a conscious, deliberate action that has resulted in it, but I do know it is a conscious, deliberate action that will change it, right? And so when we consciously say to ourselves, we need more gender representation on senior roles for women, we need more representation. And I've shown both through my career, but also through my study, that actually companies benefit when you have a C-suite or an executive team that represents your audience, your customer base. You actually have the insights and the knowledge and the experience to be able to market your products or services in a more effective way. And so I think the changes that we've seen through things like equity, diversity, and inclusion, whatever various people feel about it, I think there's a good element to it because it's at least raising our consciousness towards how can we sort of improve our company's bottom line while also elevating people who perhaps are ignored.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to say, Neil? Your brain's going. I think, it's interesting as a female of being at the table or getting to the table has been interesting for sure. There was a little while there, probably about 4 years ago now, I gotta say, that I really thought that I needed to bring a man on my team. That classic white male. I really thought that I needed it to grow my business and I ended up going completely sideways. It was a disaster. It was completely the wrong person. And maybe it would have been great if it was someone different, but it was seriously a disaster. And it was one of those moments I'm like, okay, you don't need the white male to make this successful. But it was in my brain because I'm like, he can then sit down with the people, like you said, he's relatable to them. They trust him, where I couldn't even get in the room.
Mm. And I think I would jump into that. I think, Kelly, it's the finding the right person. When we go into the whole process, it's more about the right person versus the skin color and the ethnicity, anything. Because ultimately, it's the people that are going to willing to work for that company, are going to work hard, are going to be dedicated, and pretty much put themselves the company before themselves when you're looking at C-suite positions, especially in Fortune 500 companies. And to find those people in an interview process or see it, sometimes you can't see it. You can't see it till it happens. One of the biggest challenges, Alex Hormozy talks about this in scaling a company, and I'm in scaling phase again, is you have to take the risk of hiring new people, but yet working as hard or even harder as a founder at that time period. And if you don't do that, what if that person fails and you didn't pick up the slack, your business fails. Can you add to that?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I've done 4 startups in my life, and as you know, when we were talking just prior to starting the interview, um, you got to give it your all. You got to, we're working 14-hour days is a common expectation, right? You're putting your life into to the thing, and so when you hire people, you tend to naturally expect that they're going to commit to it in the same way that you are, but it's not the same for everyone. So I agree with you, Neil, in the sense that you got to find people who you're going to spend a lot of time with, who both are similar in your views, but also have the sort of tenacity to sort of challenge your views as a founder, and to be able to do that. What I've learned over my career, and I should preface this by saying I married my university sweetheart. We have 2 daughters. My mother-in-law lives with me. Even the cat that I adopted is a female. So what I've observed is that for men, skin color or otherwise, there are things that we don't even think about that women have to. So, Kelly talked about the fact that there were doors that weren't open to her. And the glass ceiling that many women in our society face is real. My wife has faced it. My children face it, right? My daughters. And so it's kind of sad that Kelly even had to think that she had to bring on a male who was more relatable to her customer base or to the people that she was going to market her services to in order to be able to open the door. That would never have happened to you or I. Like we would have never said, oh, I think I have to have a woman who helps me open the door to various opportunities. And so I think what I'm trying to do is through my book, through the things that I've sort of learned over my career, is raise those examples, right? I was raised by a single mother, and I have 2 older sisters, and I just described my current situation. So I always say to my friends, I was raised by 3 women. I'm going to die with 3 women, and so I think I've seen, or I've been given a lens into the certain decisions that they make, or the stereotypes and the certain perception. So when Kelly, if she wasn't an entrepreneur and she was applying for jobs of a certain age, they'd be like, is she going to be around or is she going to get pregnant? Why
Mm.
would that even matter to you? Right? As in making that decision, some would say, of course it should matter, Nizar. She may not be here for 6 months or 5 months. But the fact is, what Neil said is hire the right person. Don't worry about their demographic or their particular sort of stage of life. If Kelly's got the tenacity to work and the ideas and the thing, that's what you need to hire for.
100%.
So, that's where I think just raising people's awareness about the particular biases she may face or I may face as a person of color, I think is long overdue, I think, in some regards.
So
Wow.
what are you doing now? What does your day-to-day look like now?
So I wrote a book, as I shared. I also volunteer on a couple of boards. Because about 7 or 8 months ago, my wife retired, and I was trying to decide whether to do the same. And I wasn't, I'm not a golfer. Like I'm a golfer, but I'm a terrible golfer. So I couldn't see myself doing that every day. And I'm in my mid 50s, right? And so I grew up always thinking about Freedom 55 and the benefits of doing that. And I'm a diligent saver. So financially, I could do it. But I also felt I still had a lot to give, and I still had a lot to sort of want to contribute. And so through writing, teaching, being on boards, that's been a wonderful opportunity. And it still gives me the opportunity to travel with my wife and see the world. So it's a blessing.
I think being
Wow.
on boards, that's really a cool thing because then you bring success to that board. It's going to financially help be part of that early retirement, but also gets you to still have that entrepreneur mindset,
Yeah.
not disappear completely. Congratulations on that. Now, Kelly, when you talk about growing your company, because we're kind of sharing this stuff, and I think it's really important for
Mhm.
you know uh, business owners to listen to this because it's such great advice. The scaling is such a challenging, scary thing, isn't it, Kelly? And what you've been
Yeah. Well,
because
Neil, I think it's interesting. So I walked with my best friend yesterday, and she owns a design company. She does all closets, and it's a great company. And she said, I think I'm going to grow it. This is our conversation as we're walking yesterday. And she's like, I think I can get this fridge money and this. And I go, don't do it. I said, growth does not equal more money. Growth
amen.
does not equal more money. I'm like, repeat after me. Growth does not equal more money. So, and I said, you are going to take out that loan. You're going to have to pay that money back. And so, I'm like, and she said, I needed to hear this message. And I said, you are good where you are right now. You are, kind of a one-woman show. You're having contractors, they're 1099. You are able to control what's going on. The moment you take that loan out, the moment you start in that growth mode, you are going to be in this spiral. And because I'm like, I literally am living it right now. So it's been great. And for me, I'm so grateful that I did scale and that I am going to it. But I mean, for 3 years, I didn't get a paycheck, right? Like I put everyone before myself. And it's really rough. It's tough and it's hard. Almost that made me a worse leader because then I'm expecting everyone to just really give and give because I'm paying them like, all my work is going right to them. And so their work ethic is even more personal, which it shouldn't be, but it became that because of where I was financially.
Right. Right. The blueprint, right? Is there a blueprint for an entrepreneur? If Nazir, if we hired you,
Well,
with and brought you in as a consultant, is there a blueprint, or do you believe it's there's not a one size fits all business? What are your
yeah,
thoughts? Yeah.
absolutely. I think for everyone, it's a little different. Kelly gave the right advice to her friend based on where her stage of business was. And yet, if she had a board, boards typically would say, if you're not growing, you're stagnant, right? And
Mhm.
so you respond to stuff like that. And yet, for the stage in business where she is, I think Kelly, not knowing much about what she's doing, I think she gave her the right advice, which is grow it at your own pace,
Mhm.
find your comfort. When you have that sort of urge or that motivation or founder insight to want to sort of take the next evolution, you'll know in your gut that, I can handle more now, as opposed to just doing it simply because it's the expectation from a board or from others to say, you got to double your revenues in 6 months or a year, right? It's painful. It's tough. And so I think when I'm on boards now, as I share that with folks. It's like growth comes when the organization has the capacity to do so. Pushing it too quickly can actually result in a downturn because the staff aren't,
Mhm.
the organization's not ready. But when everyone's relatively comfortable, then you need that little nudge to say, we don't want comfort to turn into complacency, but we don't want so much risk that, we're jeopardizing the organization's future. So it's that sort of just right balance that
Mhm.
honestly, entrepreneurs learn over time, and they sort of know intrinsically, like, yeah, I'm ready, or no, I'm not ready. And so I don't think there's a blueprint, but I say trust your instincts, because you
Mhm.
obviously had good instincts to be able to start the company in the first place, right?
And have success. So Kelly, I'm going to ask this question to you because this is such a great conversation. Think
Mhm.
about specifically enough what you learned in this experience and saw in this experience and how you can be a great mentor to other people in this experience. And I wish that there was a lot. I didn't go to business school. I know you didn't go to business school either. And we're learning in the school of hard knocks. We didn't. Okay, okay. And then we're saying, and then we say, well, now, and that's where I recommend any entrepreneur to listen to podcasts like this one when you have an opportunity to hear from someone who had the success, and listen
Right.
to Kelly and I, who kind of hit that. Because a lot of times people think, okay, now I've got my team, I don't have to do as much work. That's absolutely incorrect. And then if they think that an entrepreneur only works a 3-day work week, I would love to know that one until you're in the position that Nizir was in. Then, yes, guess what? you can. You can do that. You can have the 3 because you're on boards and you don't have to show up. You don't have to work that long day. So I think we have to be truthful with people once you have this a business owner or entrepreneur. This is what you're going to do. This is how your blood, sweat, and tears comes. So Kelly, my question to you is, your husband again in the medical field, how does it as a doctor understand he has long hours? How does he understand about your long hours as an entrepreneur? Because
Well,
there's different
it's
paths.
it's interesting. So he is 61 and he is ready to retire. However, our two girls are in college, and I don't want him to watch this podcast. If you're not happy, quit. So every day I'm like, you can do it, you can do it. Stay in. So it is interesting. He's driving an hour to and from work right now, which has really been affecting him more than it ever has in the last couple of months. And just those 2 hours that he can't get back, right? He can't work out during those 2 hours. He can't really, walk with the dog. He can't do these different things that he wants to do. And so there does need to be a balance there. And I'm really hoping to get him into a CMO position, which is remote. I'm helping him to do some remote patient monitoring with our company. So anyone watching, if you have any of those opportunities, he's fantastic. He does a lot with law review now. So he goes in and he's a medical witness for the groups. So he's looking at those little side hustle jobs that he can do during retirement. But it's interesting because, like you said, and we were talking about women versus male. So just this morning, like he gets up, he leaves. I wake up, I do 2 loads of laundry. I unload the dishwasher. I get the mail from the front porch. And I take the dog out. I feed the cats. I run 4 miles, and I'm still at work starting the day at 9 a.m. So, you know, um, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, do we have the right toilet paper? Is there shampoo in the thing? Is the renter happy? And I'm literally juggling our entire life, and he's going to work. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's very much a female's life, right? When I talk about my experiences as a refugee and watching my mother trying to support, her children. My father passed away when I was very young, and at the age of mid-40s, my mom had to raise 3 kids. And when I went to business school and I learned about multitasking, I'm like, have you met my mother?
yeah.
She invented multitasking. Not only did she do a full-time job, she raised 3 kids, take care of homework, made the meals at night, made sure lunches were made, homework was done, and showers and everything else was done. Like there are things that I think we can. So I share that partly because as we're talking about entrepreneurs, you don't get to turn it off. You never turn it
No.
off, right? You're always thinking about the next thing. It's always going. So if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you'll know because it's self-motivating to be able to push and to sort of see something spring from nothing. And for those who are not entrepreneurial but wish to sort of aspire or move to leadership positions, I always say, look at your experiences, and that's the theme of my book, where there are things that a self-reflective mind starts to teach you. People have asked me in other interviews, why were you a successful CEO? And I'm like, because I treated the budget like it was my own, whether it was my organization personally or whether I was the hired CEO. And I learned as a refugee arriving in the country how to pinch pennies, right? And so I'm very fiscally conservative when it comes to the organization's budget, but I also know where I can find opportunities, right? So, I joke about things like, immigrant mothers would have solved the climate crisis simply because they did so through things like reusing paper bags or reusing plastic bags, yogurt containers as storage things, all these kinds of things that they did out of necessity. And if we had turned over the climate crisis, we would have been recycling, decades ago and composting and reusing because they didn't throw anything away. And so it's that mentality. I think when I look at our budget for the organization, I'm like, this is not how I would spend my money. So why would I do differently in the organization? So I guess the lesson there is that people should sort of aspire and think about their experience and think, I got to go to business school. No, sometimes the school of hard knocks is just like you and Neil went through, is the right sort of recipe to understanding what does it take to sort of succeed in a company.
Where do you live?
I live in Toronto, Ontario, in
You.
Canada.
Okay.
And we arrived here, as Neil shared, or as you shared in the introduction, where we were kicked out of my birth country. I was born in Kampala in Uganda, which is in East Africa. And in the early 70s, there was a dictator who took over and stripped us all of our citizenship and birthrights and said, leave. And so my family and I, two sisters, my mother and father, we went to a refugee camp in a small Mediterranean country in Malta. until Canada opened up its borders, and then we've arrived, and it's been about 53 years for me. So I did all my schooling and work experiences, and so that's also the reason I share about in the book is that people look at you and they look at Neil or they look at me and they say, oh, that's a successful person. They must have had easy opportunities to be able to make it. They had generational wealth. Heck no, like we worked our asses off. Like, we worked our butts off to be
Oh yeah.
there, right? And so I think it's part of the reason is not to sort of self-promote it at all. Like I want to be very humble about it. It was to be able to say, you too can do it. And here are some of the lessons I learned.
I
This
agree
is
with you.
this
Yeah, this has been amazing. You are an awesome person. I would love to get you involved in our advisory board. We just started a nonprofit. So we just had our board meeting last night. Our first get together, our nonprofit, our little nonprofit that could is actually taking off in a big way. Which I didn't even tell you, Neil. Like it's crazy. Like there's just like so much happening.
I'm so happy.
Thanks. Well, it's emotional and overwhelming because I've been trying to do this for 20 years, and the fact that it's really finally coming together, and now having a daughter going into my field and how it's all just coming, it really is an overwhelmingly good feeling. But also like I almost cried last night because I'm like, this is so crazy that we have like this board and people and we're doing work and we're getting after school districts and the community and the work that we've been able to do. It really is a really cool time. So I would love to speak with you afterwards. Because
We'll make that
you
connection.
need another board, I think.
Yeah,
I
I think
think
so.
you do. Mhm.
Well,
I
it
would be
seems like
happy
he,
to.
he needs to be doing this 14-hour days again. I'm sure I wouldn't say that, but there you go. So, best place we can pick up your book. Where can we go? Give us the whole title,
Anywhere.
or we can get
It's
it.
available on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. Anywhere you want to, anywhere books are sold. So yeah, I mean, maybe in parting, I know we're probably getting to time, but what I would say to Kelly is what you demonstrated by virtue of spending 20 years to get your not-for-profit off the ground is surprising. Is the theme of my book, which I didn't even mention, and that's resilience. Right? Like
Mhm.
you didn't let go. You knew in your heart this was something
Yeah.
that was needed. This was something that I needed to do. And so people like you and Neil and I think we have resilience innate, or we've learned about it. And so the other thing that I talk about in my book is that resilience can be taught, and I speak about the sort of qualities that you can engender in order to be able to achieve resilience. And so I hope your readers will find it, or your watchers will find it interesting.
I
Well, we
can't
love.
wait to read it. It's going to help me, I'm sure, in so many ways. We're learning every day, right? But yes, resiliency is a big piece of entrepreneurship.
All right, and we can pick up Kelly's book really easily. Tell us about your book.
Yeah. So the new weight loss era, all about your GLP-1 medications and how you partner that with nutrition. Really excited for that. Called right on Amazon, New Weight Loss Era. You can look me up and get the book, learn
All
more.
right, that was
So thank
awesome.
you so
Thank
much.
you
Have
again.
a great day. I
Uh,
appreciate you.
all right, that was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Talk Nutrition to Me.